Hello, people. My name is Azariah Terrell, and I would like to welcome you to the Chaplain's Table. Now, this is a podcast where you are welcome to speak your truth. The Chaplain's Table is a show that really, to be honest with you, came to me to create healthy conversations for all people. The conversation will bring out deep spiritual, philosophical, and critical thinking moments in which guests will be able to express their concerns and speak their truth. The show will also welcome special guests to share in their expertise on specific subjects. So, once again, welcome to the Chaplain's Table.
Hardship regardless.
Now, to jump right into it, today we're going to have an in-depth discussion on religion, sexuality, and human behaviors. And be honest with you, with this type of show, whatever else comes up. So joining me as my guest in this conversation is someone I've known for a long time, very long time. And his name is Dr. Raphael Coleman. He is the Director of Student Personnel at Columbia Health in the city of New York. Dr. Raph, how you doing, brother?
Doing pretty well, enjoying my Saturday, relaxing for a change.
I know. And here I am asking you to think on a Saturday, right?
Well, I never stop thinking. That's always happening.
Right.
I'm sitting still for a change.
Sounds good. Well, hey, I really, truly do appreciate you. I think what we're going to talk about, there's so much you can go with this conversation, but we're going to let it flow the way it flows, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out to do this. So just briefly, for those who don't know you out there, don't know what you're about, can you briefly explain what you do, how you got to it, and just a little bit about your work?
Sure. So, as mentioned earlier, I'm the Director of Alice Health Promotion at the unit of Columbia Health at Columbia University in New York. A lot of my work entails working with the community to enhance student well-being, and that can look like developing different curricula, workshops, or trainings to build skills in the population, doing needs assessments to understand what the priority health issues are among the students, and this is undergraduate and graduate professional students, or working with administrators or serving up committees to help with changing the environment and culture to make it easier for students to practice health promoting behavior. In addition to that, I conduct research on a few different things. First, around areas of research, evaluation, and assessment, trying to think of more critical ways to collect information about humans and human behavior to ensure that we're being inclusive in our research and assessment approaches to be able to inform practice, to develop more equity-minded and inclusive practices. And usually those practices for me are deep in health promotion, so really developing equity-minded interventions for students, reaching those students from historically minoritized groups on campus, so like Black students who are identified, students who are international students, or first-gen students, so students who don't historically access our resources. And another arm of research is really focused on the experiences of LGBTQ students and really hoping to enhance their academic and social experiences with the ultimate goal of enhancing their well-being, overall well-being.
Oh, wow.
So that's my overall area of work that I do now. I've worked in higher education for a long time, and it's funny to think because I'm so young, but I've been doing it for almost 10 years now.
Right.
Working in different capacities from residence life, working in conduct, working for fraternity sororities. And I never thought that I would end up in this world because initially I wanted to be a medical doctor. Don't know how I ended up where I am now.
Wow.
But after going through college and some of my professional experiences, I really found a knack for doing that research on the population level to try to inform practices that can really improve human well-being, and it's just been rewarding. And I think the journey has lots of twists and turns. I don't want to dig too much into that because I might go off topic. But
hey,
I am where I am,
right?
And I did enjoy it.
Wow. Hey, well, it's funny that you say you are where you are. I mean, I think the way life has a way of putting you right where you need to be and helping those who need to be helped. So, appreciate your work and sharing that, man. Now, so I'm gonna jump right into it real briefly. You talked about, talking about minority students or international students. One of the things I read in your bio, and I'll just kind of read it somewhat verbatim, it states that your work involves disrupting systems that negatively impact like minority students or international students in an effort to co-create environments that affirm students in all of their identities. When you talk about those systems, what type of systems are you speaking of? Just as a whole, or family system, religious systems, all of them,
So specifically for me, when I say systems, I'm specifically thinking about oppressive systems, or systems that disadvantage or put students from historically minoritized identity groups at a disadvantage of being academically or socially successful in university spaces or in higher education. A lot of folks tend to really focus on individuals. So usually if you look at some of the older literature that talks about the experience of Black men or Black women or people who have not historically had access to higher education, they usually talk about them from a deficit perspective. Like they're not ready, they weren't prepared, without actually interrogating the system, whether they're their educational systems, whether they're familial context, whether it's religion, all of the social systems that people have been exposed to throughout their life, and those systems that are perpetuated within the university context that continue to exclude people. A lot of my work is about interrogating those systems. It's like, yes, there's some intrinsic things that people have and come with as they enter these spaces, but if we don't, put us in there as administrators or as educators to interrogate how we might be perpetuating this idea of disadvantaging or oppressing people from these identity groups, then we're colluding with those systems. So a lot of my work is disrupting that. And what disruption looks like is doing the critical research that people are scared to do because they don't think they're going to get published. I'm like, I don't care about getting published. I care about ensuring that what I'm trying to say is reaching those populations that need to be reached. Or I'll be in a meeting with a bunch of administrators. I'm typically the youngest and only Black person, and sometimes youngest Black queer person in spaces with a lot of old white men who've been doing this work for 30 years. I'm not afraid to speak up because I know I have access to those spaces to introduce an alternative perspective that they have not seen, heard, or listened to, but I have the capital to be able to say it and speak to it in those spaces. So, and there are risks to that, because I either have to share some of my own experiences, or because I've always been a Black student who's been in predominantly white school, so I have to share my experiences, or I might get, reactions where people are like, you don't know what you're talking about, and then, that's not sure. Like, you're about to get are you sure? Okay.
Right. Yeah. No, it's funny. And that, I think, just going back a little, the work and, the whole purpose of this show is speaking your truth. And some of your experiences, that's actually kind of my next question, if you will, just talk about briefly, it sounds, I hear the passion in your voice when you talk about it. Just if you can give maybe one or two examples of something you've experienced that has now even helping you in your work, and, you might see some students like, wow, I've been there, just to share like briefly an experience you may have had.
Yeah, so if I didn't mention this earlier, I identify as a Black same-gender loving man, and that's it. So that's my racial and sexual identity. And one of the experiences that I think about, and I think this is probably why I kind of went down the route of really exploring religion, it happened in college, in undergrad actually. I undergrad was when I came out positive about sexual identity, not with with friends, but with family and people that I trusted and that I was close to. But one of the things that was interesting for me coming to college, I had raised fundamentalist Pentecostal all my life. So naturally, when I came to college, I'm looking for the Christian folk, like where my Black Christians at. So, I joined I was in the gospel choir. I led some Bible studies. I was part of a few different kind of religious groups that were just mostly Black Christian people who had a similar experience as me growing up. And I know when I came out of the closet with my family and my friends, my friends, my close friends outside of that kind of Christian circle, they were pretty accepting, and they were like, we were waiting on you. Who are you gonna tell us? We already did. Anyway, my family, of course, well, not of course, but my family didn't have the most positive, reaction. A lot of it was just keeping their beliefs about, sexuality and homosexuality being the same. And there was also some fear, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to you? Like, you're going to get beat up, or you're going to catch sexualized disease. All these things were kind of speak for how my family reacted. So, because I have that experience with my family and my family's church, etc., right. I decided, I had a positive experience with the friends on campus. Now I'm going to tell my Black Christian friends. And when I tell you it was almost worse than me telling my family. Wow. It was pretty bad. I got shunned. I pretty much got kicked out of the gospel choir. They really? We can't have unclean spirits speaking because we're ministering, so we can't have this and all. It was just a mess, and I didn't have any words. Like, I thought I could go to like the chaplain at my school, or I could go to and I couldn't talk to these people because the choir director reported up to the chaplain, and he was actually one of the people calling me or talking to students and telling them to reach out to me to ask me about my sexuality and whether or not I would get delivered from it, or if I just won't be welcome to the choir anymore. And I was like, I thought we had enough connection. I was able to talk about these things with y'all. I thought we were just right. Clearly that was it. So kind of going through that, for me it was like, okay, so there's the piece around race. Of course, I had some white gay folks and not feeling like I had access to like the LGBTQ resources on campus. So I'm like, okay, so y'all are all whitewashed, so that's not really for me. And your journey is very different from mine, and I can't really find a space here. And I couldn't really find it in the religious space. We shared the religious identity, but I'm like, well, y'all still have this negative perspective of my sexual identity, and you're telling me that I can't, have this, I can't be Christian in this, or I can't practice Christianity the way that I want to because of my sexual identity. So, I felt kicked out there. So I'm like, there are all these spaces where I felt like affirmed some part of my identity, but didn't accept me for all of it. So I was like, I had to that, I could be Christian if I'm not gay. I can be Black almost if I'm not gay. I can be gay if I'm okay with just being around white people. So I'm like, I'm like, where do I go?
Right.
I have to really sit back and think through how am I the only person experiencing this? And I'm not. Like, I've probably been a Black gay man in predominantly white spaces. And a lot of the students that I encounter who are Black gay, Black lesbian, Black trans, folks who are in predominantly white institutions who might have a religious or spiritual identity, or who might have another racial identity on top of being Black, they are constantly on this negotiation process of like, which one's going to be more salient for me? Am I going to have to be Black today as it is my sexual identity? Am I going to have to be Christian today? Like, you had to allow all these negotiations in order to just be accepted in their spaces, and I constantly see that in the research. And I was thinking about that should have to go through it. I really do.
Right.
But that's one of my personal experiences that I know that I constantly see when I'm encountering students. And not that I get an opportunity to have a lot of individual conversations with them these days, but when I do have those opportunities, I see that a lot. They're constantly in this conflict and having to negotiate. Who am I going to be today?
Goodness. Wow. That I mean, what you just said is so powerful. I've often said that I don't understand why, especially, I mean, we both grew up Pentecostal in the Christian church, but it's like we pick one thing over the other that we just want to totally be mad at. And, I mean, people probably not like this, but the pastor can kind of do what they want to do. They done slept with somebody else's wife and yet forgiven. And I'm like, and it's interesting. And I think growing up, I mean, being a millennial and young, it's like, I never understood that. And, but it was something I wanted to point out. I can go on my charade, but it's something I wanted to point out that you said in an interview. It was 2013. I think it was with Urban Socialites. And you stated that people in your communities, with faith or people who share your sexual identity or Black people, carry a burden for a lot of illnesses, and you want to know why. Now, that I had to sit back and just like, okay, whoa, that's a lot in one sentence. But just those illnesses you're talking about, what it is that you see in the communities.
So I remember this because I was graduating from a master's program and I was being interviewed about my master's thesis. So and one of the whole purpose of my master's thesis was looking at health disparities and what health disparities are when there are pattern differences between populations based on social identities when it comes to the prevalence and incidence of certain types of illnesses and diseases. And those are preventable illnesses, whether they're chronic or infectious. So constantly whenever I would read literature or even just see in conversations or go to conferences about the public health, it would never feel like being a space where like Black people are at increased risk for HIV, depression, anxiety, et cetera. All these things are preventable by or social and structural things, like structural changes that we could be implementing and increasing their access to either education around these topics or increasing their access to treatment and resources to be able to prevent and or treat these issues. So when I stated this, I remember thinking, I reflected right back to the church. And I'm like, okay, so I grew up in a predominantly Black church. Right. And when I think about my predominantly Black church, most of the people there were my family members. And when I think about, the extent to which people in my family wish to go get educated, I know we're the first generation of our families to actually go through higher education. And I feel like that's something, not saying that education is everything that we'll be able to, decrease that disparity, but it's a start. And two, thinking about some of the messages we received in church, like where it's almost as if there was a devaluation of anything outside of prayer. Like, all right, it's like the devaluation of anything outside of prayer, and it was also some level of a glorification of a struggle. So it was like, you got to struggle. and I'm like, to some extent, yes, struggle comes with growth, but I don't think I felt, and this is a speculation, that some of my elders and some of my people in my generation now feel complacent with the struggle. And they feel like if you're not struggling, then you're not constantly trying to keep closer to Jesus. And I don't feel like that is valid. And for me, I think it serves as a barrier or a missed opportunity when we have so much respect for religious leaders and for the Black community. I think it's a missed opportunity for religious leaders to use their platform to actually reframe that perspective. Like, yes, you're going to go through hard times and hard situations, but what about that more positive? What about the positivism? What about being strength and advocacy? What about, talking about prayer in addition to using said resources that can help improve your health? Like, why exclude those things, and why do you feel? And for me, and I don't want to speak for Legman, I think it's slave mentality, and I feel like you got to break out of it to come to actually see some type of progress. But it's something that's constantly perpetuated, constantly reinforced, and sometimes you find, and I found myself not being able to align with it. The older I got, and the more I started, seeing what was outside of that space of the concept of the sanctuary, if you will.
Right. Now, that's a side question. Just, do you think that, especially in the Black church, I think I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's a chaplain as well, and he was saying he really doesn't like the song "Amazing Grace," and the part that he hates is that it saved a wretch like me. And he was like, "Why do I have to be this broken down, torn thing? If God created me, wasn't I created in excellence? Wasn't I created in God's perfection?" And do you think that's something? And I mean, you can go back to slavery, of course, that was taught to Black people, that you are pretty much, seem like trash, you're no good, and the only way you can be good is if you cleanse yourself. And do you think that's a taught thing?
I feel like that's a whole other podcast. Honestly, I do believe, I really do, because because I think if we actually dug into
Right.
that kind of, because I'm constantly, yes, I understand like the literature, I know what the Bible says and all of that, and it talks about, but I don't know if a lot of Black folks who are in church, who are like speaking like fundamental spaces, have had the opportunity to understand the religious social basis process and some of the historical pieces behind how we have gotten to where we are as it relates to our affinity for certain denominations of Christianity and how that has had such a pervasive influence in our lives. And I'm not saying it's to, throw it all away, but
right.
I don't think we are ever given the opportunity to step back and really understand what religion is outside of Bible itself.
I see. Right.
And how do we? And I think to go back to your question about the Amazing Grace being saved, I think that idea of being having a self-image as being wretched and broken goes beyond religion. I think religion has been used as a tool to tell me that we are wretched and that we need saving. And everyone needs some level of saving, but we don't have to show up to God as broken. I mean, yes, He's there, but what about those opportunities to show up as someone who is made, in my mind, and God? Like, I'm thinking about Lauren Hill. We're all made of God.
Yeah.
we believe in God. Like, are we supposed to be a bit strong there?
Yeah.
Like something like that. Is that something? But that's not what we're taught, because we're taught to struggle and it's like, oh, woe is me.
Yeah.
Now you're here to save me. And I think that rhetoric is something that's a lot bigger than religion, but religion has been used as a tool to communicate that perspective.
Wow.
And we have carried it on.
Right. Wow. Yeah, and that's, I think that you're right. That is a whole nother podcast, because we can go on about that for a while. I think
all day.
But it's funny. And I'll ask you something else. But I just see that this generation, us millennials, and it's like we are trying to create that type of dialogue and trying to say, look, you hear a lot now, we're kings, we're queens, and that's good. Like I have a 2-year-old daughter. I'm not going to go telling her she this broken down, wretched person. Like, you are a queen, you're a princess, And I think, it's a lot of work to do. So, and it's brave to say it, because I could tell you now, a lot of people who's probably going to hear this interview are going to start their judgment, but as you say, hey, this show is about speaking your truth. And, but I appreciate you being bold and keep doing the work you're doing, man. That's, but we might have part 2 of this thing, but,
Hey, I have critics. We all do.
Right.
Right. That's great.
Right. Now, in that, I want to point out something else that I was reading in your interview with Urban Socialites. You said something that you're not giving up on the Black church. And this is 2013. I'm curious where you are now. You would like for faith leaders to step back and see where their messages are really coming from and how the messages impact the entire congregation, not just the congregation they choose to see. When I read that, I was like, I was like,
ooh, that was 6 years ago, Jesus.
Yeah, but it's like, I think it's still relevant today, and so where are you now? Are you still not giving up on the Black church? Are you attending church? Or have you found, is that, where are you?
So I don't go to church regularly, and I think I don't consider myself half religious. I consider myself more spiritual than anything, and I think it has a lot to do. When I think of religion, I think of tradition. I think of going to church Sunday in, Sunday out. This is based on my experience growing up. Listening to music, hearing the sermon, and then if we need to come back for prayer, all that. Like, it's just like a ritualistic practice of going to commune with the saints, if you will. And for me, I'm like, I don't know if that is what edifies me. I don't think that it is edifies me. And for me, when I think of spirituality, I do believe in God. And I do believe I have a connection to God. And I do believe I have a relationship with God. And I do believe that I feel that I have a sense of accountability, knowing that I have that connection with God, and also the connection to my purpose. And feeling that I have to do. And if I do these things that deviate from my ability to do that, then I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get some type of reaction or feel some type of way about it. And and I do believe that comes from a more spiritual space. When it comes to going to church, it's like I don't feel like I've gone to churches that have different churches, whether it's black churches, or I've even gone to a few affirming churches where like the pastor is gay. And it's always been interesting whenever I've gone to those churches, and it seems as if they're trying to do the exact same thing that they have seen in like their experience in Pentecostal churches. They're just, now we're also gay. And I was like, well, now you're not really disrupting, you're not doing anything that's revolutionary or transformative in my mind. Or I've been to churches that have been, I guess, just accepting, like, oh, we don't approve of your identity. You're welcome to be here, but don't be surprised when we talk about, homosexuality being a thing, and we want to take from that point to it. And again, I also think that rhetoric is damaging, and talk to some harm. So, like, again, I'm not going to show up in that space. Right. And I also know that I'm at a place where I am very self-actualized, and I'm also not quiet. And if a pastor might say something in a space, I will have a conversation with him. And I know that's not always the best reaction. So, like, to avoid that opportunity, I just don't. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. The only thing I'm missing, and this is probably from just my whole life being in church, is that sense of family and community that I had in that space. Like, that's what I felt. I remember growing up looking forward to the church. So, hey, I was going to be clear. My cousin, and for that was my family. So it was going to be, but it was less about church experience, and more about this is a part of my culture, and this is what we do. And this is what I know we're going to do every Sunday, probably every Wednesday, probably Tuesday. Like, I know that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to choir rehearsal on Thursdays, I think. But it's like, I just knew that that's what I was going to do. So for me, it became more of a practice and a ritual, as opposed to really taking the opportunity to understand who God is.
Right. That's important.
Not based on how people have told. Because I had always gone through the space of people telling me who God was. Based on this, but I need to just know who God is myself. And I need to really do some self-work, and not just based it on, like, living this, like, be just empty vessel that someone's just filling, that some person who has told me that they're a pastor or a mentor or evangelist, that they're filling me with their own ideas of what God is. And that's like, I can't.
Right.
I can't. I'm too critical of a person to sit with that. So, so I guess to answer your question, like, no, I don't go to church, but I don't feel like I'm missing something from going to church.
No, and I find, a lot of people won't admit it, but I do believe we're in a time where a lot of people feel that way, and more so are going because that's how we grew up. I usually often argue with, I won't say argue, but, when I have a conversation with people, sometimes when you're a kid and you're raised a certain way, and, you got fear instilled in you, you grow up and you teach your kids that. And, a lot of people don't really sit back and just figure out, why am I really doing this? Am I really giving something? Are we just going to go to church and try to have this high musical moment and shout? But, how do I apply it? So, I think a lot of people, more than will admit, will probably agree with you, especially where we are in these days. So, I think that's brave, and, hey, it's what's needed. I'm really glad we're having this conversation, man. This is good.
Well, I'm glad to be able to share my experience. I know I can totally go on a tangent. I can talk about a lot of it, but I know we have a short period of time.
Yeah. So. Me and you both. That's why I let me just go and, ask the questions, because we can, it's funny, and just for y'all that don't know, me and Raph, we're cousins, but we had a conversation. Oh, I don't know what year that was. I know we was at Emory. And we just got to talking over lunch. And, when I thought about doing this show, I was like, man, I got to have more, because I think people don't talk about it much. Now the conversation's going on. But, I believe that you may help somebody through all this. So, yeah, that's how we, you hear us say we can go on and on. We really can. So, now, Dr. Coleman, I am very big on knowing thyself. And I want to kind of get back to your students and what you do at the school. You were the co-author for Keep Your Spirit Aligned, which was a case study on Black lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer students defining and practicing spirituality. Can you just tell us a little bit about that research and how it has helped the students self-identify and then,
Yeah.
them defining their own practice of spirituality?
Yeah, so that study was a lot of fun, to say the least. And kind of the whole impetus behind it was the case study, or the case was a federal institution, but it was also a public institution. And for those who don't know, a lot of public universities don't have official, or they can't have official religious affiliations or official religious organizations that are specifically abide by churches. I went to a private school that had that was religiously affiliated Methodist institution, but there was a chaplain of the school. There was like a religious life office. Those things didn't exist at this stage. So the impetus behind it was like we know that there are students who are attending that school who have some type of affinity for religion or some religious practice, but they don't necessarily have access to it on the campus proper. So there were, different smaller groups of folks who, supported different religious identities within that school, but also in the larger community. So, and we knew me and some of the other authors had done studies on Black LGBTQ students at other types of schools who all talked about some of their experiences with religion and still having some interest and having some access to kind of those religious practices and traditions in their institutional space while they're in education. So we're like, okay, we're at a place where they don't have that. So let's really dig into this and learn a bit about this practice.
Right.
So we did a lot of different conversations, not only with students, but with administrators who serve those specific student populations, Black students, LGBT students. And there was, and we actually also did, what was fun, was some of us went to, in our conversations with students, we asked them kind of to share with us either pictures or information about places or spaces where they either practice religion or practice spirituality, and ask their permission to go into those spaces and observe the experience. And some of those things are churches. Some of them talked about their residence hall, but we didn't want to go to the room. Or they just share with us spaces that they would invite us into and observed it and actually experienced and immersed themselves in what the experience was. And, brought it back to add some richness to what students talked about when they were in spaces. And the big thing that we found was, one, there's this whole idea of defining and practicing spirituality.
Right.
And students, because we really want to understand, because a lot of the students talked about choosing spirituality as what they would define their religious experience, opposed to choosing religion as how they would define it. We want to unpack that. What do you mean by spirituality?
Right.
And they kind of defined it in three ways. They really emphasize the idea that spirituality is internal congruence. So having some fix yourself, some integrity in who you are, the person to self-actualization. So like being full, like knowing who you are and being confident with who you are. So that was a piece of like the spiritual is the internal congruence. Okay. We also talked about spirituality as personal relationship with a higher power or spirit. So some folks still, believe in a Christian God. Some folks who weren't raised Christian, may have talked about Allah. It's just a higher power,
right? Not
necessarily having to choose one, but it could have been several higher powers. So it's like yes, internal congruence, but also a higher connection to a higher power or spirit. And the other piece of spirituality is connectedness with other people. So being able to find a sense to share that experience, their spiritual experience with other people. So whether it's going to church or having a small meeting with other folks, it doesn't have to be in this is the church in the sanctuary, but being able to share contact with other folks who shared some connection to a higher power, and to be able to have more open conversations about what that connection is like, or what that feeling is like to have that spiritual experience. And then with that, we also found that the students really felt that they had to go find and create spiritual spaces. And specifically when they were thinking about finding creating spiritual spaces, they were thinking about how do I create spaces that are spiritual for me, but where I can also be both Black and queer. Because they were in a predominantly white space, so usually if they decided to go to a church in that community, it was going to be a white church. I mean, not saying take the fire, but it was like I don't feel full here, or I don't feel there's a sense of disconnect for me in this space where I don't feel that I can be completely who I am, but it's just so I'm not going to be able to access that spiritual space for me to actually practice spirituality. So they talked about thinking of different ways that they can find and create spaces that were not white spaces, that were not some heteronormative. And sometimes it was something like just finding a space on campus where they would pull other folks together who, shared the experience and like had, conversations or prayer or meditation or whatever it was to have that connection to the higher power. Or they, created spaces within, they kept it very private. Like it was a residence hall. Like this is where I practice spirituality. I come to pray. I come here to unplug. I come here to reflect, to disconnect from the day to day, but still to find that opportunity to connect to a higher power. So it's just so much that they had to do, but they didn't feel like it was a chore. There's like, I just know that in the spaces that exist for that are considered religious or spiritual spaces, I can't be Black and queer at the same time in those spaces most times. So instead, I'm creating these spaces of resistance. In essence, to still to align with how I define spirituality, practice spirituality in that way, without feeling oppressed or ostracized or for whatever identity, whether it's your Blackness or your queerness. And it was enlightening, especially for students who are in an institution where it's a public institution where they can't really have a religious affiliation or a chapter per se, or be in a community that's predominantly white where they don't have access to, at the very least, a Black church. Some of them, they said that I would love to go to a Black church, even if they do talk about sexuality, but I know I have a sense of connection there in the community, and I will at least embrace this better. So, there's just so much that they talk about, and about the importance of having those spaces. And a lot of the implications from that were for university administrators to be able to create those spaces or provide those spaces for students if those don't exist, or to work with students to help them understand their spiritual development, their development spirituality, if that's the journey that they go down, and connect them to those spaces so people can come out to it. So that was a big piece of it. It was fun. And of course the work too. But
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm almost running out of time, but I have to ask you this question. And again, for those of you that want to know the case study we were just talking about, it's called Keep Your Spirit Aligned, a case study on Black, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer students defining and practicing spirituality. At the end of all this, we'll tell you how you can follow Dr. Raphael Coleman. But the last question, you was talking about being Black and queer, some of the students were saying, do you see the LGBTQ community rights separate or equal to that of, like, the African American rights or civil rights, things like that? Is it because you're carrying like a double burden there, it seems, when you're fighting for rights and they get all these laws coming out now? How do you balance that, and is it separate, equal, or how do you define all that?
So that's a whole other podcast.
It is. We're going to have a part 2 for sure. I'm asking you all these. We can go so long with this, but however you can answer it in this time we have.
Yes, in brief. I do think there are some different types of rights that African American folks and LGBTQ folks are seeking, but I don't think the struggle or the fight is a separate fight. And I say that because I feel like when people fall into that place of what I call the oppression of empathy, I feel like they're losing sight of the larger issue. There's a larger system that is oppressing a variety of people based on their social identity. And honestly, when people are trying to fight within or fight against, especially when case in point, when I see Black people or African American folks say, "Oh, yeah, black rights are most important unless you're gay," that's something that's a white person issue. Then you're distracting from the larger issue, because at the end of the day, a Black queer person is still a Black person. Right. And if you're going to fight for Black people's rights, you're fighting for all Black people's rights. And same with gay rights to the LGBT community. Like, a Black queer person is still a member of the LGBT community, regardless of their status. So for you to only focus on the rights of the privileged people within those. I mean, because typically when it comes to Black rights or African American rights, they're mostly focused, like, the people who tend to have more voice and more power are Black intersexual men. And then if other folks get in, it's like, well, that's important, but XYZ. Same over with the LGBTQ population, which that's many communities, but mostly the rights that tend to get the most focus are those of gay cisgender white men. So it's like the people who are in privileged places at those intersections tend to have a bit more access to capital to be able to push their agenda forward and get to make some decisions about what the agenda are. So it's like you can't have those conversations without really understanding intersectionality and understanding how compounded oppression can actually impact someone's lived experience, and recognizing that as me, as an individual, I don't see myself as either Black or gay. I see myself as a Black gay man, and that introduces a unique experience.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate you for sharing that. I think this has been an amazing conversation. I think a lot of people can learn from it. I hope people take it. I know there's going to be some people who are upset. That's what I hope. I'm hoping for it. I want it all.
I mean, they need to be upset. They need
to. Exactly. So I think, because it's a lot of work we really, really, really seriously need to do. Again, Dr. Coleman, I appreciate you. Now, how can people reach you and follow your work and what you're doing?
I would say probably the best place to follow me is on Twitter. I am a tweeter, and it's my username, my handle is Dr. Raph, so DRRAPH. I mean, Instagram is Instagram, but I don't think I post a lot there about any of my work. But for those who are interested, they follow me on Instagram. My handle is Dr._RDCOLES.
All right, and there you have it. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Coleman. We will. I got a feeling at some point we're going to do a part 2 of this thing, and we're probably going to get some other voices involved, of course. But thank you so much for taking out the time on a Saturday. I really appreciate it. And thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, you take care.
All right. Thanks.
There you have it, folks. That was Dr. Raphael Coleman. Very, very good conversation. But for the last part of the show, it's time now for what I call the meditation for the soul. And I just want you to really listen carefully to this. We live in a society where everyone is in someone else's business, of course. We live in judgmental times where people will judge you before getting to know you. Everyone is so busy pointing fingers at what someone else is doing and fail to look internally to themselves. I want to encourage you today. Don't concern yourself with what others think of you and whether they will accept you. I want to take here from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who stated, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." People will go off what they hear about you before meeting you, saying things like, so-and-so said this about you, so I don't like you. And people will look at you and make their own perspective of you before meeting you. But that does not mean that it's the truth about who you are. So today I challenge you, those of you listening, those of you watching, to be yourself and to be proud of who you are and who you are becoming. Continue to better yourself. And lastly, don't be afraid to speak your truth. As I always say, unlock yourself. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking with you again on the Chaplain's Table. Shout out to DigiLabs for helping me record this podcast, and we're looking forward to more and more great conversations. I'm Azariah Terrell, and this is the Chaplain's Table. See ya.